Hello, welcome back to Planet 40k. We've got another bite-sized review for you today. This time we're going to be doing one of the larger models from the Necron Codex, and that's going to be the Monolith. So if you were to purchase it in the UK, it's going to be costing you £105. If you're in the USA, it's going to be costing you $170. Right, so the Monolith, of course, is a Lord of War model, so it is going to require either a super heavy detachment or a super heavy auxiliary detachment. And as for the points cost, it's costing us 300 points. Which is in fact the exact same points cost as an obelisk. So as for the keywords, it's a vehicle model, it's got the core keyword, and it is a Titanic model. That means it's able to fall back and still shoot as normal. So let's talk about some of the stats of note. Now it has a movement of 8 inches, but you may have noticed there's no fly keyword. So it's quite janky when you're moving it around the battlefield. Now it is strength 8 and it's also toughness 8, and in terms of the wounds, well, it's got 24 of them. And then a 2+ armor save to add to that too, so fairly resilient. But there is 4 less wounds than Necron Obelisk. Now it does have a degrading stat line. It's the movement, the ballistic skill, and the amount of attacks it has that does get degraded. The movement I don't care so much about, but the other 2 are quite important. We'll get on to why as we go through this video. So let's talk about some of the weapons that are available to the Necron Monolith. So as standard, it comes with the 4 Gauss Flux arcs. And these are 30-inch range, rapid fire 3, strength 5, -2 AP, and 1 damage apiece. So in total that's going to be 12 shots, or in rapid fire range it's going to be 24 shots. That's going to kill around 2 to 3 Space Marines a turn, or 10 to 11 Guardians a turn, depending on who you're going up against, I suppose. So not really Space Marine killers, they're more for the light infantry, I guess. It's then got a particle whip, which is a longer 36-inch range, heavy D6, strength 12, -3 AP and 3 damage. Now it's got the blast keyword, so you can't be firing this into combat, but -3 AP and 3 damage is quite a decent amount. Just a shame that it's D6 amount of shots though, isn't it? Now, if you wanted to exchange those Gauss Flux arcs, you can do so, and you can change them for the death rays. Now, there are 4 to change, it's going to cost you 5 points per death ray, so it's going to be a total of 20 points to exchange to these death rays. They're all 24-inch, heavy 1, strength 9, -3 AP, and their damage is D3 +3. So pretty decent on the damage department. And then finally we get onto the melee side of this Monolith, and it's actually pretty good. So it's got the Portal of Exile. This is strength user, so that makes it strength 8, -3 AP and 3 damage, and it automatically hits. You don't need to roll to hit for it, automatically hits. So that's 6 hits already. At strength 8, -3 AP, 3 damage, is literally eating Terminators alive. On average, you're likely to kill 3 Terminators, or if they've got the Storm Shields, it'll probably go down to 2. But this is a Necron vehicle. Our vehicles are not normally that good in combat. So yeah, if your opponent's elite models want to charge the Monolith, let them go ahead. As for the abilities, all the standard stuff, living metal, command protocols. It does also explode, but there'll be D6 mortal wounds as opposed to D3 because this is a Titanic model. But the 2 more unique abilities are as follows. So the first one is Death Descending, which is effectively Deep Strike, to be honest with you. The reason I'm bringing this up now is because of the next ability. So the next ability is Eternity Gates. So in your movement phase, if the Monolith remains stationary that movement phase, in the reinforcement step of that same movement phase, you can summon a core infantry unit from strategic reserves, and then place it within 3 inches of the Monolith, and not within engagement range of enemy units. So in a sense, it's kind of like giving our core units deep strike, but they have to be within 3 inches of the Monolith. Now, of course, if you are deep striking the Monolith in with its Death Descending ability, then of course that counts as movement, so you can't be using this kind of ability on that turn. Now, there is a stratagem that will cancel that out, which is the Prismatic Dimensional Breach. Normally you're using this on the Night Scythe, but you can also use this on the Monolith. It's pretty much the exact same ability as the Eternity Gate, except you don't need to remain stationary in order to use this stratagem. It could be a melee unit, it could be the Lich Guard, and you also don't have that restriction of the 9 inches away from enemy models. There's no restrictions with this ability or this stratagem, so Lich Guard can come in literally a couple of inches away from enemy models, and make an easy charge, and away you go. Other stratagems of note, you've got the Curse of the Pharaon, although it is going to cost you 3 command points because it's a Titanic model. You can opt to automatically explode if you wanted to. You've then got Stellar Alignment Protocol to be used in the Monolith's top bracket, just in case it is bracketed. You don't want to be hitting on a 5+, for example. Or if it is in combat, you don't want to be using D3 attacks. You want to be hitting with 6 automatic hits, don't you? And then another one is the Disruption Field Stratagem, which you might not commonly use this with the Monolith, but you can get it to strength 9 because it is a core unit after all. If you're going up against those tougher Toughness 8 models, then yeah, you want to get it to strength 9 just to be able to wound them on a 3+. Now, if you don't want to use a Disruption Field Stratagem, there's always the Protocol of Hungry Void for the +1 to the strength. That's if that command protocol is active for that turn. Then finally I wanted to mention the Dimensional Corridor Stratagem. This one is one command point again, and it affects a core infantry unit again in the reinforcement step, but this time that core infantry unit is actually on the battlefield as opposed to strategic reserves. You can literally pick them up off the battlefield and then redeploy them within 3 inches of your monolith. Now this time there will be that 9-inch restriction because it's effectively like using a Veil of Darkness relic. Taking them from one area of the board, putting them onto another area of the board. But yeah, this monolith kind of gives that flexibility whether they're in strategic reserves, whether they're on the battlefield, or whether or not the monolith is actually moved or not, I suppose. Also, don't forget, when you are using this stratagem, if the unit you're targeting is actually in combat, it doesn't matter. They can still be used with this stratagem, and they're not even going to be considered to have fallen back either, because they're just moving from one side of the board to another. There's no fallback move. So yeah, you're kind of getting them out of combat for free. So it works really well with, say, your Locust Heavy Destroyers that are maybe getting trapped in combat, maybe your Necron Warriors again, shooter units that don't want to be in a fistfight. Now as for Dynasty codes, of course Lord of War models can only gain the Dynasty code if they're in a super heavy detachment and not a super heavy auxiliary detachment. If you're in the super heavy detachment, you will need 3 Lord of War models. Isn't the easiest thing to do, especially in smaller games of course. But if you do manage to do it, then the Dynasty codes are available to the Monolith. So let's talk about some of those. The Mefrit Dynasty, of course, for the extra 3-inch range and the extra AP at half range. That's not too bad of an option. Then the Hilak Dynasty, I suppose, for objectives secured. On a large model, you can literally screen off an entire objective, very similar to the Obelisk in fact. And I wanted to also mention the Novak Dynasty because of that +1 to the charge roll and the extra AP on top of that. With those Strength 8 automatic hits, this thing can do a ton of work in combat. Now before the summary, let's talk about some unit synergy. It is a core unit after all, so your Catacomb Command Barges, your Overlords, your Silent King, your standard Necron Lords, all of them are going to give either the My Will Be Done ability, or the Lord's Will ability, or the rerolls to the hit rolls and wound rolls if it is the Silent King. Now a Technomancer with a Canoptic Cloak can heal this model, D3 lost wounds. Similarly, the Canoptic Spider can also do that with a Fabricated Claw Array. Illumina Zares can augment this model because it's core. The Chronomancer can give it a 5+ invulnerable save and a rerollable charge, that's not too bad in fact. And finally, if you wanted to reroll hit rolls of a 1 at range, you've got the Triox Stalker. So let's get on to the summary today. So as far as damage output goes, I think it's okay. You get similar-ish results to an Obelisk, except the Monolith is also useful in the fight phase as well as the shooting phase, and has all those teleport shenanigans on top of that. In fact, the Monolith is better at killing more expensive models that your opponent may bring. Elites, monsters, vehicles, whereas the Obelisk is just better at killing standard infantry, maybe even just Space Marine models. The issue kind of comes down to the points cost again, 300 points for a large model. Realistically, you can spend those 300 points elsewhere and get much better results in terms of damage, in terms of resiliency. I mean, yes, it is going to tank a lot of your opponent's shots because it's got a lot of wounds, a 2+ armor save. It could be a huge distraction. And it's also going to be a decent line of sight blocking model, so you can hide some of your models behind it. Maybe it's a Reanimator, maybe it's your Nightbringer, all sorts of stuff you can hide right behind that monolith because it's pretty chunky, isn't it? Annoyingly, it doesn't have the fly keyword. I think that's just stupid. It should have the fly keyword, shouldn't it? Just to give it a little bit more flexibility. If it did have fly, that doesn't make it overpowered. Just gives it a bit more movement flexibility, I guess. So overall, I think it will serve you slightly better than an Obelisk. There's not too much in it if I'm honest with you. It's just that we do kind of lack in the heavy department as opposed to anti-infantry. So that's why the Monolith is probably better than the Obelisk. But let's get on to the Planet 40k rating today for the Necron Monolith. I'm going to be going with the Planet 40k rating of 2.5 out of 5.